Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February 22nd, 2024 regular meeting of the Brisbane Planning Commission. At this point, I don't ask for a roll call.
We'll do a roll call,
Okay.
yes.
May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Funka,
Present?
Commissioner Gooding,
Present.
Commissioner Lau, Commissioner Patel, Commissioner Sayasan.
Here.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Second. All in favor? And I think this can just be a hand vote.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. Are there any members of the public who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? And to allow that, the staff will post the text and Zoom numbers on the screen. You can see them now. There'll be 30 seconds to allow that. Any commissioners want to pull anything? So we'll go ahead as planned. Thank you.
Okay, 30 seconds has elapsed. I have no raised hands.
Okay. So then is there anyone in the public who wishes to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda tonight?
Well, through the chair, can we get a vote on the consent calendar?
Yes, can I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
And second? And then a vote, please, by hand. It's good. So the motion to adopt the calendar, the consent calendar passes. So now moving on to oral communications. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the commission on an item that's not on tonight's agenda? And again, staff will display the numbers to do so. And set a timer for 1 minute. And I understand that there were no written communications received this week. I didn't notice any coming by. And have any others been received? Okay.
Okay, 60 seconds has elapsed and I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I think that we can move on to tonight's agenda, which is a follow-up on some amendments to ordinances for to be in compliance with the Senate bills. And I think this is a follow-up from a previous meeting that we had. And staff, may we please have a presentation?
Yes, thank you. This is the fourth workshop on the draft ordinances for SB 9 and SB 478 implementation. And since we've gone over these already in some detail, and the Commission's feedback has been incorporated into the draft that's in your packet, the main focus tonight is on the related amendments. That is, of course, unless you have questions on those items that we've already covered. We're happy to go there as well. These two draft ordinances are related to other sections in Title 15 of the Municipal Code, which are the focus of tonight's workshop, since they affect development regulations, setback exceptions, and procedures for approval. Also, we'll talk further on the topic of potentially raising the height limit in the single-family residential districts and not just the multifamily residential districts, which the Commission raised as a question in the last meeting, and that was related to a housing element program. I'll start tonight's presentation with just a couple slides on the background, and then we'll get into the ordinance discussion items. This is good. Yeah. Both Senate Bills SB 9 and SB 478 passed in 2021 and became effective in 2022. As you know, SB 9 applies to single-family residential districts for urban lot splits and two-unit developments, while SB 478 places requirements on minimum development standards that a city can impose on multifamily developments. Both of these are aimed at increasing residential density to address the statewide housing shortages. Related in terms of sections of the municipal code affected our ordinances to implement some of the housing element programs as shown here. These fall under the city's goal of facilitating and supporting production of housing at all income levels and avoiding unreasonable government constraints to the provision of housing. Program 2A6 specifically speaks to SB 9, while Program 2A12 calls for raising the height limits within the districts that allow multifamily development. This again was called for by HCD as part of the housing element certification process to allow for three-story development. Many of the other proposed ordinance items fall under programs 7A1 and 7A3 for simplifying and streamlining housing improvement and new development projects, and also allowing for ministerial approval for reasonable accommodation projects. So again, the focus for tonight is whether to expand the raised height limit to the single-family residential districts. There are a couple of procedural updates to design permits and variance chapters. We pulled the exceptions out of the general use regulations in Chapter 1732 to a new chapter, which would be 1747, and updated that as previously discussed. Then the appeals and administration chapters have also been updated. So first, on program 2A12, in our last workshop, the commission posed a question about potentially raising the height limit within all the residential districts versus just districts where multifamily residential is permitted. More information was requested regarding the borders between the multifamily and single-family districts. The single-family districts are the R1 and RBA districts as shown in the light yellows on this excerpt of the zoning map. This slide shows the current height limits in purple, which ranges from 28 feet on the lower or flatter areas of the R1, R2, and R3 districts. The downtown NCR02 district currently allows for 35 feet, as does the SCR01 district, which is Southwest Bayshore. The POAZ districts, Parkside, are already permitted to have 38-foot heights, so they're not really a factor in all this. The areas required by our program to change to 36 feet are all the districts that allow for multifamily development. And so those are indicated with the green text showing 36 feet on the map here. Note that it's pretty small change for the NCR02 and SCR01 since it's just going from 35 to 36 feet, but more significant for the R2 and R3 going from 28 or 30 feet, depending on the slope of the lot, up to 36 feet once we pass the ordinance. So again, R1 and RBA are optional in terms of raising the height, so we wanted to check and follow up on the commission's thought. Just a couple more items to note here on this. Approximately 10% of the R1 properties border a multifamily or mixed-use multifamily district. And that's either directly adjacent or across the street. That's a 6 to 8 foot difference for these properties if they remain with the current limits. Given the lower density and only 1 foot difference from 35 to 36 feet between the RBA Brisbane Acres District and the proposed change to Southwest Bayshore, that's less of a factor, of course. Also, there was a question about the reason for lowering the heights in the 1990s. As noted in the agenda report, this stemmed from the 1994 General Plan policies and programs, which pertain to encouraging modest scale in residential development and small town character, maintaining that. So it's notable that the height standards set at the time were uniform across the R1, R2, and R3 districts. And at the same time, they didn't have the requirements imposed on the city by the state to raise the height limits to 36 feet. So it's kind of, it's open for discussion, and I'll pause here, and then we can continue on for the other items. So if there's any thoughts from the commission on that.
As I remember the discussion, I think the proposal from the commission, the thought was to make it uniform at 36, mainly to address the potential like difference in mass and bulk if you're on the border, right, between the two. It still makes sense to me. And I haven't changed my mind about it. It did, as I was driving down, I was thinking a little bit about what, the historical rationale that was used to preserve the modest size. And I guess at the time, the thought was that there would be a noticeable difference in the bulk and mass of a building that was 30 feet high versus 36 feet high. And I wonder if over time, if you raise it to 36, would there be a regression to the maximum allowed height as there was turnover in stock? People automatically, if I can go to 36, I'm going to 36. I don't know if that's necessarily true. And if that over time would affect sort of that character. That's the only thing that went through my mind. And I'm just wondering if anyone has any thoughts about that possibility. I can't say that any of that changed my mind. I still think it makes sense to, if you're going to raise it in some zones, just do it uniformly. Commissioner Patel.
I just think that the premise of it being a small town when we have what I think all agree is mandates to be more dense, it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I just think it's fair. It's more fair, whatever the word is. I don't know. I think it's best if we just have everyone have the same ability to make their house or their resident or their commercial property the same height. Because then no one's feeling like, well, why can they do it and we can't? And it's like, well, you can.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And even if there was a change in that general appearance, I don't think it would be noticeable.
Yeah.
Because it would happen so gradually, if it happened at all, that it would make no difference. So does anyone else have any new thoughts on this?
No, I agree, and I think increasing the height, it's not that significant, that we would really notice. So I agree with just making everything uniform.
Great, thank you. I think you put it in there provisionally, right, that change?
Correct.
It sounds like we're aligned.
Very good. All right. So moving on next is the design permits chapter. And this is pretty brief, just to mention that there were some edits included to this chapter to address amendments or modifications to a previously approved design permit. It leaves these to the discretion of the zoning administrator, but may be referred by the zoning administrator to the planning commission, depending on whether it's deemed to be a major or minor modification. And so there's essentially a cross-reference over to chapter 17.56, which we'll touch more on in just a moment. Similarly, the updates to the variances chapter are fairly straightforward. For clarity, the references to zoning administrator approval of variances has been removed. The chapter currently refers to either ZA or zoning administrator or planning commission, but the practice over the years has been for the planning commission to review and decide on variances. Chapter 17.56 would be renamed to zoning.
Excuse me, Ken?
Yep.
Can we go back to 17.47.060? I think it's at page 52. I have a question about the part subsection E about notice to the planning commission.
So bear with me a second. Let me pull up the. Sure.
Should be showing. So 52. Here, do you want to, now that it's there?
So,
At page 52?
looking for my cursor. There it is. Okay. Page 52. Almost the end. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
right there where it says notice to the planning commission.
Sorry. E,
Am I?
reporting decisions, right. Yes, sorry. Correct.
Okay, that's,
Your
okay, it's not,
52 is
it's not the
different than
same
our
page as
52.
what's printed out on my document here. I'm looking at 17.47.060. It's, I think you scroll up.
Item B.
Yeah, item B.
Attachment B. I'm sorry, I'm lost here.
Yeah,
It just says item B on the upper right-hand corner. Yeah. She's talking about.
Oh, well, we're looking at that.
Yeah, it says page 52, item B.
Page numbers on it.
There are page numbers, but it's not correlating to what she's.
Yeah.
can you do a word search? You could just do There, right there, okay. Yeah. So it says here, all decisions of the zoning administrator shall be reported to the planning commission by email prior to the expiration of the appeal period. And my only question about that is just the vagueness. Prior to, I mean, it could mean, because without specifying a date, it could mean the day before the appeal expires. So I was thinking of inserting by email at least, I don't know, pick a day, 7 calendar days prior to the expiration of the appeal period. I just think that you have to put some date so that it's not like one day before, and then, we don't have time to really consider it.
Right. Yeah, so that seems like a reasonable addition to this. We can add that. If 7 days is the commission's pleasure, the appeal period is 10 days, so that gives us a little time to get it out to the commission. It is by email, so that
Yeah,
could get out.
yeah, and
pretty quickly.
it doesn't have to be 7, it could be less. I just wanted to put a number of days so that, we're not just like surprised by,
Although if it could be 7, that'd be nice, because then it gives us some time to go through and read all this stuff if we have to. Or whoever is going to be on the commission.
Okay, so 7 calendar days.
Sure, we can make that addition.
And also I noticed, I guess it's a typo. If you go up, it says A, notice procedure. Should that be C?
A notice procedure. I'm sorry, where are you
I
again?
think it's just misnumbered because you have, if
Oh,
you
you're
go up
right.
from E,
That's it.
D, and then
A's.
it's A, it should be C,
Yep.
right? It's just a typo.
Yeah, you go from A, B, back to A.
Yeah. Okay, we'll correct that.
Okay,
Good catch.
thanks.
That's great. So, thank you. I think that was a great catch. So this is kind of a check and balance, I guess, right? In a way, is that the administrator can make a decision, but the planning commission can, if, as specified here, if any 2 members want to appeal it, they can do so. And just so I understand procedure there, if things do become more ministerial and fall under the authority of the zoning administrator, does the planning commission still see those projects? They don't come up in the meetings anymore. So basically, the email notification would be both, it would be the decision as well as the original project, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. That would be the first we'd heard of it. I think that's kind of an interesting, so we just have to, commission will have to be aware of that. Yeah. But I assume since everything, all there is, they're objective decisions, right? So there should not be, often anyway, there shouldn't be much
Right.
disagreement. Okay,
Generally,
thank you.
simpler cases than the planning commission might hear, for instance, on a variance or something like that, so,
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that variances still come before the commission.
correct, yeah.
I had a quick question regarding the height. On the height max, if somebody was adding solar panels on top of the roof, is that additional height from the panel to be included in the height max, or is it, would they have to apply for a modification exception?
So the height maximum above the roof deck is 2 feet for solar. And then if they go above that, so that's the exception. If then they go above that, then it would be a ZA determination on that.
Did I read somewhere that's a ministerial decision though, right? It has to do with whether it creates noise or nuisance or something. Is that what I read? I remember reading that somewhere in this packet.
There's so much in here, I'd have to
Yeah.
look back at it again, but that's my recollection as well.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, should we switch back to?
Oh, it's section 17.47.060 that you were asking about.
I think in my presentation.
The solar height max. It says height exception modification for roof tower solar height exception modifications. If the zoning administrator is able to make the finding that the feature would not result in specific adverse impact upon public health and safety.
Okay, all right. Okay. So next chapter would be 17.56. We'd rename that to zoning administrator to more precisely reflect the content of the chapter. Administration sounded a little too general. Additionally, it updates the list of applications for which the zoning administrator may take action consistent with the other chapters in Title 17. It also updates the minor modification provisions and adds a new section defining major modifications to a planning permit. Minor modifications may be approved by the zoning administrator, while major modifications would go back to the original approving body, whether that's the zoning administrator or the planning commission. In that case, the original rules for noticing and findings, all that would apply. Additionally, a section has been added to provide procedures for granting minor modification as well as the other permits that fall under the zoning administrator purview. Much of the contents of the draft update to the exceptions to development regulations we've discussed in previous workshops, so unless there are follow-up questions, I won't cover all that again tonight. The exceptions have been pulled out of the general use regulations, that's chapter 1732, and would be in a new chapter, so it's standalone as 17.47. Briefly, the exceptions pertaining to lots have been updated in section 030, and that's consistent with the urban lot split provisions. Section 040 has been updated to a table format, and a couple consistency changes have been included there. Setback exceptions have been updated as previously discussed. However, fences, hedges, and walls are a type of setback exception that we didn't discuss yet, and so we'll dive a little deeper into those on another slide in a moment. And finally, as we previously discussed, request for reasonable accommodations would be an administrative approval through a building permit.
Ken, I have a question about the flagpole and flag setback. What is the standard side setback for that?
So the district regulations for the side setback is between 3 and 5 feet, depending on the width of the lot.
Between 3 and 5? Is there any way, because we've allowed flag size, the length up to 5 feet. So if someone were to put a flagpole just right at the, right next to their fence, and then the flag stretches out or is whipping out and it's, 5 feet, and it goes into the neighbor's yard. That's my only concern is if we could make it 5 feet so that that flag doesn't go on the other person's yard. Does anyone else
Up
care?
to the commission.
Well, yeah, yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay. All right, we'll make that change. Thank you. So next was, did I skip one here? Fences. So a little more depth on fences, hedges, and walls. The current code provided in the general use provisions, staff believes could be a little bit clearer, and so the standards have been detailed in a table format by zoning district. Currently, 6-foot fences are allowed in the setback areas in any zoning district, but subject to a number of exceptions. One of these is that in the side and rear setbacks in central Brisbane and in the Brisbane acres, fences may be 8 feet high, with the top 2 feet being in lattice. Then up to, another exception is up to 8-foot chain link fence may be located in the setbacks in the TC1, M1, and C1 districts. That's Crocker Park, Industrial Way sites, and the Baylands. The proposed provisions would keep the height limits in central Brisbane and Brisbane acres, but would allow for solid fences up to 7 feet, which matches the threshold for when a building permit is required. If the fence is over 7 feet, up to 8 feet, then which is as currently required, then the top 2 feet would need to be in lattice in such cases. It would also expand the districts in which a chain link fence would be required, but would still prohibit them in or adjacent to the residential districts, except for temporary construction fences. For instance, the TC2 was not named in that chapter, and TC2 is largely hidden from view. That's the southeast bay shore, which is down close to the lagoon waters there. So to include a bit more in chain link fence exceptions. Findings for walls have been updated to match the grading ordinance that was fairly recently adopted. The findings are very similar though, but seemed like a good match. Hedge heights would be permitted to be maintained to 8 feet, similar to fence heights. And although the Director of Public Works would still retain control to require a fence or hedge to be reduced if it's located near the public right-of-way, and that would be for visibility issues. Finally, it clarifies the requirements for fences within the Habitat Conservation Plan area. The content is essentially the same, but some wordsmithing there. As with other exceptions, fence exceptions would be subject to the zoning administrator approval, as with the others. If there's any questions on that, otherwise I'll move on.
The only one is lattice. Is that a pretty well understood term? I can picture it, but is there only one kind of lattice? And not, fences can be important to keep good neighbors. So I'm just wondering if that's like a term of art, is it?
I think so. The current code calls for lattice.
Okay.
What we proposed and this is lattice or similar. So it would be some kind of open pattern that would allow light essentially through.
I understand that's the intent.
Right.
So, I mean, as long as it's sort of more or less understood as a term of art like that, then I think that's fine.
Okay. And finally, the appeals chapter 17.52 has been updated and reformatted for clarity. Substantive updates include a new section for appeals of ZA decisions has been added, and those would go to the Planning Commission. The zoning administrator and planning director decisions would have a 10-day appeal period. The Planning Commission's appeal period would remain 15 days, except where specified otherwise in Title 17. A provision has been added for clarity that if an appeal closing day falls on a weekend or city holiday, then the next business day would be the appeal deadline, and that's how they're treated already, but just for clarity in the code. And with that, I know there's been questions throughout, but if you have any others, happy to take those.
Any members of the commission? I know it brought back a lot of memories of discussions we had last year about flags and roof heights, which was great. Thank you. It's kind of a synopsis in a way. But anything other else that,
So is this going to then come back to us for a public hearing? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That was a lot of good work that seemed it could be tedious at times.
Thank you. And it was with help with other staff. It's not one man show, for sure.
yeah, well, thank you very much for addressing the questions we had about the, parking and heights and things like that. I think that was very helpful. Do we know how, so now it's being reviewed by other authorities like the fire commissioner and people like that right now, right? And how long will when will it come back for the public hearing?
So I would say a month at least. We'll give them some time to finish reviews. And I want to follow up with them basically now that I have further direction from the commission. But so yeah, we'll do a public notice and bring that back. And
I see. So
As
there's
soon
public
as
notice to say
possible.
this is going to happen, they'll have some time, and then there'll be a public hearing like at a planning commission meeting. Okay,
correct, right?
understood. So any other comments from any commissioners, Commissioner Lau, Patel? All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And appreciate, again, the great presentation and summary. I think with that, we're drawing to a close. Any announcements from staff? Anything that we need to be aware of?
Just a reminder, I think the county planning commissioner training is next week. I don't know if anybody signed up or not, but I think it's not too late. But if anybody is interested, I think you are running out of time to sign up for that. I can't think of anything from council recently. So I think that's it for staff.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Gooding?
I should add here that I see the next regular meeting is March 14th, and I just want to advise you I'll be out of town and unavailable on that date, in case anything massively urgent is on the calendar. So, thank you.
And I think this would be a good time to say that I will be fishing on the 14th. So I also won't be here. So I don't know if that makes, we still have a quorum for, but part of it will be handing over the gavel, and there will be an election, as I understand as well, right? So,
Yeah, we may actually end up canceling that meeting. We still have another week, I think. So we may end up just canceling it. And if we did, then reorg would happen at the 28th, which would be nice to have everyone present. So if anyone has any anticipated vacations for that date, let us know. But I think it's likely the 14th will be canceled. So you can fish in peace. And
okay. So there will be some more communication about that. I apologize. I kind of missed that, which you,
you'll get a notice of cancellation if it's canceled and an agenda if it's not.
okay, great.
I think, would we reorg if not everyone was there? I guess if there's a quorum. Yeah. We would wait probably to do the vice chair and chair nominations until there is a full
Okay,
complement of commissioners. So if you did meet on the 14th, considering there'd only be 3 of you, then the election would still happen on the 28th.
okay, great. Okay, thank you. With that, I think I can gavel the meeting to a close, right?
Yep.
All right. Thank you all very much. Thanks again.
Thanks.